Hey everybody. I want to talk about All the Pretty Horses by Cormac McCarthy. This is the first book in the Border trilogy. It came out in 1992. It's a coming of age Western with a romance angle to it, and I thought it was fantastic. I've read, I want to say, four of McCarthy's books. I've read Blood Meridian, I've read No Country for Old Men a long time ago in high school. I don't really remember it. I'll be rereading it. I've read The Road, and now this. My favorite has been Blood Meridian. After having read No Country, that was like my first one, really. I really like that book a lot. It's one of my favorite books. This is still fantastic. I think this is an easier read and it's lighter. It's more of an adventurous sort of coming of age novel. Um, but it's just engrossing completely. It's completely a fantastic read. Um, this concerns a young boy of about 16 named John Grady Cole. His family in Texas sells off their family ranch, and he really wants to be a cowboy. So he gets up, he grabs his buddy, Lacey Rollins, who's, I think, a year older than him, and they hop the border down to Mexico to basically make a life for themselves and try their hand at being cowboys. They meet some crazy characters along the way. Early on, they hook up with a character. And by the way, I won't spoil anything until the end. There's a couple quotes I wanted to read that I thought were really interesting. But they hook up with this kid named Jimmy Blevins, who's just this pain in the ass, funny, this dumb character who is got likely a stolen horse and gun and claims to believe to be 16, but is most likely 13. And they get into some trouble with him, and they get mixed up with some other characters too. Maybe mixed up isn't the right word. But this book kind of, like I said, has an adventurous feel, and takes them through their time, the tale of them trying to become cowboys down in Mexico in the late 40s, a time where, at least according to this book, my knowledge of Mexican history is extraordinarily limited, but did not have the sort of industrial progress that other sections of America had at the time. So a lot of the area, at least where they are, is a lot of expansive plains. And they have to grow up very fast. And John Grady Cole, first off, the writing in here is immaculate. It's beautiful to read. I think this is an easier read. I think that if you have never read McCarthy and want to get into some great American literature, I think this is a great place to start. All his trademark stuff is here. His particular Faulknerian sort of writing style, that sort of like King James prose-esque writing style is here. Is beautiful descriptions of landscape that reads like poetry is here, but also witty dialogue and lots of humor, and it's that kind of book that'll make you laugh and cry and feel good and bad all at the same time. I definitely think it's a good place to start. I love the characters in here, all of them. Everyone is just written so well, even side characters. John Grady Cole's really interesting because, he's 16 years old, but he carries himself very, very well. And what these kids have to go through in this sort of coming of age saga, I'm going to fix my camera for you real quick. Um, you know, they handle themselves very well, but at the same time, you're constantly reminded that they're just 16-year-old kids, and there are little things as an adult reading this where there's things that they just don't pick up on or they have to learn. It's a great book. It also deals, like I said, with that sort of end of the West sort of deal, coming to the very, very end of that kind of, probably had already passed in America, but like the very tail end of the Old West, of cowboys and stuff. Not that we don't have cowboys still, but it's very different. And going down to a place where they feel like they've stepped back in time, or that time has stopped to a degree. So, I don't want to say too much more. This is a great book. It's just a wonderful read. Like all of the McCarthy books I've read, despite the fact that, like I said, I think this is definitely an easier read. It's more dialogue heavy than his other stuff. It's not an easy read, for sure, but by far the easiest. Still, despite all of McCarthy's books, I read them so quickly because they're just so engrossing, and I cannot stop reading them. And I always get to the end and wish that there was more. It's just so enjoyable to read. I wanted to read two quotes. This is something I always want to do, and I always forget to do it in my book reviews. I like to read quotes to you, stuff that stuck out to me. So we're going to probably, if you don't want to hear any of this stuff, get into spoilers, let's say, because I'm going to read from the book and maybe talk just a little, very briefly. I won't get too deep into it, but the first is my favorite quote. And now, every time I read any book. And like I said, I don't really do this often, but I always think of what my favorite quotes are as I'm reading, or something that really sticks out to me. And I read some I've read some great stuff lately. But when I read McCarthy, it's so hard to choose because everything is so goddamn good. Um, this was probably my favorite quote, just for the beauty of the prose. They rode out along the fence lines and across the open pasture land. The leather creaked in the morning cold. They pushed the horses into a lope. The lights fell away behind them. They rode out on the high prairie where they slowed the horses to a walk, and the stars swarmed around them out of the blackness. They heard somewhere in that tenantless night a bell that tolled and ceased where no bell was, and they rode out on the the round dais of the earth, which alone was dark and no light to it, and which carried their figures and bore them up into the swarming stars, so that they rode not under but among them, and they rode at once jaunty and circumspect, like thieves newly loosed in that dark electric, like young thieves in a glowing orchard, loosely jacketed against the cold and 10,000 worlds for the choosing. I loved that line. That's so good. Just the description of landscape and the coldness of the night, and, pointing to the stars for hope, what they want to make of their life. It just was a great, great quote. I want to read another quote, one more, involving Blevins, who's just such a freaking good character, so funny. And this will be a little spoiler-filled. I've described Blevins to you, and to give you some backstory to this scene, they stopped at, I think they ran out of water, and they stopped at a little store, and they bought some cider. I don't think they really knew what it was. And remember, they're young, and Blevins is likely 13, and they were just drinking, knocking back like pints of cider, and they're all pretty much hammered at this point. And a thundercrack rings out, and Blevins is terrified of thunder. His horse is as well terrified of thunder. Okay. Rollins says, "It runs in the family," said Blevins. "My granddaddy was killed in a mine bucket in West Virginia. It run down in the hole 180 feet to get him. It couldn't even wait for him to get to the top. They had to wet down the bucket to cool it before they could get him out of it. Him and 2 other men. It fried him like bacon. My daddy's older brother was blowed out of a derrick in Batson Field in the year 1904. Cable rig with a wood derrick, but the lightning got him anyways. And him not 19-year-old. Great uncle on my mother's side, I said, got killed on a horse, and it never singed a hair on that horse, and it killed him graveyard dead, and they had to cut his belt off him where it welded the buckle shut. And I got a cousin ain't but 4 years older than me, was struck down in his own yard coming from the barn, and it paralyzed him all down one side and melted the fillings of his teeth and soldered his jaw shut." "I told you," said Rollins. "He's gone completely dipshit. They didn't know what was wrong with him. He'd just twitch and mumble and point at his mouth like." "That's a out lie. I never heard one," said Rollins. Man, that shit is fucking funny, man. Blevins is a great character, and to get into spoilers, I love that he's terrified of thunder and goes on this rant, just drunken rant about how his entire family has died from and succumbed to lightning. And that is really the catalyst of the book, and ironically and hilariously, and very well written, that is what becomes his demise. Not soon after this, or not long after this, rather, he takes off. His horse goes off, and he takes off. And remember, this is likely a stolen horse, and he attempts to retrieve it, and they get mixed up, and he ends up getting arrested and getting killed for trying to retrieve his horse that someone took from him, and he ends up shooting someone dead. I think he shoots 3 people dead, and he ends up getting himself killed. I just thought it was very poetic and a great line. So anyways, all the pretty horses. Every time I read McCarthy, I just have to take a day in between the next book, because I have to sit with it. It's so good. I really do recommend this book. It's great. I haven't even talked about it, as I often like to talk about the quality of what I'm reading, the actual physical book, because I don't think enough people do that. This is an Everyman's Library copy. I've talked about them a lot on this channel. They're great. They're hardcover. The spine is sewn. I have the bookmark in there just for myself, but there's a cloth bookmark. They're wonderful, and I think that this is not very expensive, and if you were going to read this and buy each individually, it'd probably even be cheaper to buy this, and the quality will exceed any paperback that you buy. So yeah, this is a great copy to have. I have a lot of other ones too. Anyways, that's all. That was a great book. I'll be back with something else, another movie or book review, most likely. I don't know what I'm going to read next. I always read a few books at a time. I read like a really long one that takes a while, and something shorter. So I might jump into the next book, The Crossing, or I might, I don't know, jump into. I've been wanting to read the second book in the LA Quartet by James Ellroy, The Big Nowhere, for a while. I have a review on my channel of the first book in that series, The Black Dahlia. It's one of the finest crime novels I've ever read, so I think I might jump into that. Anyways, if you like McCarthy, you like this book, if you didn't like it, whatever, let me know. Let me know what you're reading. I like to hear from you as always. And yeah, peace out and have a good day. Bye.